Welcome to Lesson 9 of Unit 13, Adapting to Change. In this lesson, students work to answer the question, what kinds of adaptations do plants and animals have that allows them to survive in their particular ecosystem? Students figure out that organisms that live in prairies are specially adapted to the prairie environment. When an organism's habitat does not meet its needs, it may not survive. Humans can also change an ecosystem, which causes changes in the other living things in that ecosystem. In the Engage portion of the lesson, students will model examples of adaptation using the prairie cards from earlier lessons. Find the big blue stem grass card from the prairie card set and also show the grass on the ecosystem poster. Explain to students that big blue stem grass can grow taller than grasses they typically see around their school or homes. Measure out 8 feet on the classroom floor and then have 2 students link hands and stretch their arms out to show how tall the grass gets. Big blue stem grass grows twice as tall as this. Continue the discussion explaining that the roots of this plant are as deep as the plant is tall, 8 feet. Finally, have students turn and talk, then share out about why the roots of big blue stem are so long. In the Explore portion of the lesson, show students this picture of big blue stem roots and ask them to describe what the roots are like. Ask them what questions they have about the picture. And if no one asks about why the roots are so long, branched, and thin, pose that question to students. Record any student ideas they have about these root structures, and then explain to students that using a model of prairie roots can help them determine why big blue stem grass has long, branched, thin roots. Support for this activity is here in the teacher pages, and also in this tutorial. As students model prairie roots, they will need access to this student journal page. Here they will record the amount of water their root gained and compare with other groups. In this tutorial, students will work in small groups to model prairie root systems. To prepare for this lab, you will need the following materials from the kit: 6 pieces of rope, 6 plastic cups, and a digital scale. You will also need to provide water for students to use during this lab. Select 3 pieces of rope and gently fray one end of each piece, as shown here. Leave the other 3 pieces of rope intact, as shown here. Add about 2 inches of water to each of the plastic cups. Finally, choose a location in the classroom to place the digital scale for student groups to come up and use it to determine the mass of their rope. Remove any packaging, check the scale to be sure it turns on, and set it to measure in grams by pressing the Mode button as needed. The scale should read 00 to start. Separate students into 6 groups, giving each group a piece of rope and a cup with water. Each piece of rope may have slightly different masses, so it is important that each group record their own data. Have each group come up and place their rope on the scale to find the mass, then record on this student journal page here. Help students round the decimals on this scale up or down to the nearest whole number. Once each group has recorded the initial mass of their rope, instruct each group to place one end of their rope into the water at the same time. If the group has a frayed end rope, the frayed end should go into the water. If the group has non-frayed rope, either end can go into the water. Let the ropes soak in the water for 15 minutes while students watch and discuss this video on prairie ecosystems. After the ropes have soaked for 15 minutes, have each group gently shake excess water from their ropes and return to the scale one at a time to measure and record the new mass of their rope. Each group should record the mass in grams on their student journal page, here again rounding to the nearest whole number. After each group has recorded the mass of their rope, assist students in calculating the grams of water the rope gained by subtracting the initial mass from the soaked mass. Then record that data here and have student groups share out. It may be helpful to compile data for all groups on chart paper or on a slide for comparison. Return to the video on prairies and show the rest. Then have students answer this question on modeling prairie roots. In the explain portion of the lesson, ask students if we have figured out why prairie roots have this structure. Students should share out their answers to the last question on their student journal page shown here. Students will turn and talk to give a formal definition of adaptation. Adaptation is a structure or behavior that helps an organism survive in its environment. Explain to them that adaptations can be something a living thing has or something a living thing does. Prairie roots are an example of a plant adaptation. The structure of the roots helps the plant get water to survive in the prairie environment. The environment can meet the needs of the prairie plants because of the adaptations they have. Return to the ecosystem posters and have each student choose an animal from the poster. Then students will break into groups or pairs to create newspaper articles using the animal report template on these pages in their student journal. Library books or internet resources can be used for research. Completed articles can be shared with classmates via Gallery Walk or through Google. In the elaborate portion of the lesson, return to the case of the disappearing bees. Show them this picture of bumblebee adaptations and describe the adaptations for students. Ask students what the bumblebee must have in its environment to survive. Give students time to think, pair, and share about the clues in Bill's story that could help explain what happened to the bees on his farm. Record student ideas on chart paper. In addition to this discussion, give students an opportunity to use the 3 ecosystem card sets to switch a few cards between ecosystems and try to create a food chain with the new cards added. Some may be able to create successful ecosystem food chains, while others may find the animals and plants have very specific needs only met by their particular ecosystem. In the evaluate portion of the lesson, ask students to return to their animal report template and compare it with 2 other animal reports of different ecosystem species. One that would survive less well than the animal they reported on, and one that would not survive at all in their chosen ecosystem. Ask them to provide evidence from the templates to support their claim about which species would survive. Finally, return to the unit phenomenon of the disappearing bees and ask what we have figured out in this lesson that will help determine a solution to the disappearing bees in Bill's story. Continue recording their ideas on the ongoing chart paper list so that students have evidence of how their thinking on the phenomena is changing over time. By the end of this lesson, students will construct an argument that in a particular ecosystem, some organisms survive better than others.